Hi, my name is Dejan and I'm a failure enthusiast. I believe that failures are just part of the success and not the end. Together with my team, I'm bringing to you the failure talks and maybe new ideas on how to leverage a setback for a successful comeback. Thank you so much for tuning in. These are the Failure Talks, and I'm glad to have Maria Centeno here, who is an amazing entrepreneur. And I did a little bit of research beforehand, and I just found something very interesting, what she's doing. And she said actually on one of the platforms that you're using, she's helping people, she supports people, starting a business or a project, and she wants, or she believes that we all should create something. Doesn't matter if it's a project, a business, in order to live the lives of our dreams. That's a powerful message. Thank you so much for being here, Lisa.
That's a nice introduction. Thank you for having me. Thanks for the invitation.
We are very excited. Thanks so much. So, as I said, you're very successful, you're an entrepreneur, but you also have a podcast, right? It's called
Business Basics.
What is the Business Basics about, in short?
The basics of business. So what are the fundamental, like the foundation of good business?
That's interesting. I said that you're very successful, but you also just mentioned before that there was a little bit of a hiccup in your life, right?
Yeah, I don't know if I would describe myself as very successful, but it's very kind of you that you do.
Let me put it that way. Do you live the life of your dreams?
I do.
So then we would say that's how to measure it.
Actually, that's really true. That would also be my definition of being successful, like liking what I do and liking how I do it. Yeah.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit about the hiccup. I just mentioned it before. You told me when we had our chat beforehand. You may live your life of your dreams right now, but there was this hiccup, this fuck up in your life that you would love to share with us. What was it about?
There was a long process that brought me here, and a long road that brought me here, and a lot of hiccups or fuck ups that led me to this place here, and that were really important. Everything started 2015 when I founded my first business, or my first startup, as I described it always as a startup. It was called Kicker, and Kicker was basically a marketplace for artists and local craftspeople. So the idea behind Kicker was to connect local and contemporary young artists of our generation with people my age back then. I was like 21 or 22 back then, and give them an alternative to buy art from IKEA, for example. Mm-hmm. Like those hipster generation like I was in, to enable them to get cool art and to connect them with the local artists around in Vienna. And so we wanted to create a platform, like an online marketplace where they can sell and promote their work, and where they too can meet each other.
So the problem was that people in our generation, I might be a little bit older than you, but let's for the camera, I'm still very young. Can we put a filter or something on? So for your generation, the problem was that they might have been in art, but they didn't know how to buy art
and how to market
it.
Because I was always working in marketing back then, and I always worked in marketing. So for me, that was a no-brainer. But I also knew a lot of artists and musicians, and I knew that they would have a really hard time market and get visibility. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to solve their problem with the visibility. And on the other side, I was the customer who wanted to have amazing art pieces and individual art pieces, unique pieces. And so we wanted to bring both of them together. I don't know if there was really a problem, as you stated, and you always should solve a problem with your business. In retrospective, I don't know if there really was a problem, but we tried to solve it that way.
Let me ask you one thing. So you had this solution. It was a platform for artists, but also for people who would love to buy art and you want to connect to them. So how did everything start?
We launched a landing page and we launched social media channels, but we didn't come so far, unfortunately. And we just had it for 1 year. So how did it start? I don't know how I came up with the idea. I can't really remember. I think that I was painting my apartment back then, and I was like decorating and putting everything new together. And I think I was looking for something, and I couldn't find it anywhere. Like there's some places or some solutions like Unique Art Shop, like the one with the posters, or you can buy a lot of those things on Etsy, or Folk Days is a really cool startup that's doing like kind of those things, but it was not something, I couldn't find like the solution, like the marketplace for local based artists and contemporary things to buy. So and then I had this idea in my mind, and then I talked to my best friend actually, Alina, and she quickly became my co-founder. And so she was right on board, and she said, yeah, let's do this together. And so we did it. And and then we extended our team. We picked up like 3 friends of us who had an agency back then, Infinity. It was a print agency, and they had some skill with web development, graphic design, and so we collaborated with them. And so we had a really cool team, like we were 5 or 6 people back then. And it was really exciting. And then we talked to potential customers and artists and got to know artists and went to exhibitions and went to a fashion market. We shooted a promo video. We prepared for a crowdfunding campaign. We built the app design, the web design, built up the social media communities. It was really, really cool and really exciting.
So you realized there's a problem because you faced it yourself. Then you had an amazing team, obviously. And then there have been also a lot of people who started following the project and expressing interest in it, right? That's amazing.
Yeah, we got really good feedback all the time. I mean, some artists were artists, you know, it's like also like...
You can buy my soul.
Yeah, sometimes a really difficult target group, but we found a lot of young artists that wanted to be supported in marketing and selling their stuff. So yeah, we got really good feedback all the time.
So what happened next? A success story? I thought it's like...
It should be.
It should be, because right now
everything could have been successful if it wasn't for the wrong mindset, I would say now.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I wish I could tell you now the story of how we fucked it up with our big investors and our millions of money and screwed up, but we didn't come that far. I think I can say I fucked it up with the mindset. I had the wrong mindset, and you know, all of this excitement that the company brought and the community brought and everything had the what do you say, like the flip side, that it's also bringing up a lot of pressure on you as the founder. And I don't know if other founders experienced it that way, but I found myself in a position where I felt so much pressure to be the perfect and to be the know-it-all. And I thought that I was responsible for the idea, I was responsible for the team, and so I was the one who always have to know all the answers. And I couldn't admit weaknesses, or I couldn't admit that I didn't know anything. And of course I didn't know anything. Like everything was new to me. I was 21 or 22, and everything, I was so hard on myself. And I didn't want to let other people feel my insecurities. And so I put on this like fake it till you make it boss mask and everything, and pretended like to know it all and to have it all figured out. And I was really hard on myself. And because I was really hard on myself, I was really hard with the team as well. And yeah, and after the time and after the month, I think they felt it, like the hard way. Yeah.
So you've been doing something, people loved it, and with this fame you felt also a lot of pressure to disappoint the people, so you kind of felt like to even work more, know more, be the best in the thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is sometimes okay, I would say. What did go wrong then with that?
I mean, it wasn't really fame. We were like really at the beginning. We didn't know, we haven't had one customer. We had like a nice community and everything, but there was no success already. There was no, I wouldn't say there was fame or anything. It was just the pressure I created for myself. There was, like in retrospective, I know there was no necessity for this pressure. And there were a lot of different things that went wrong with this wrong mindset. Because I think there are 3 things that are really important when founding a startup. 3 pillars. It's either time, money, or knowledge. The best situation is when you have 3 of them.
Yeah.
It works well when you have 2 of them. It maybe works when you have only 1 of them, but we had none of them. We didn't have time because we had our day jobs and our studies in university. We didn't have money because we were poor and young. And we didn't have a clue about what we were doing.
Okay.
So no knowledge. And so it wasn't really a good starting position. And I think another fuck up was that I built this company as if it was a unicorn. But now I know it was a zebra. Like if you're familiar with the
Yes.
like the difference. But back then everybody wanted to have a startup. Everybody wanted to be like Mark Zuckerberg and build the next unicorn. And we have been in the startup scene for the whole year, and we went to Startup Live and we were pitching there, and everybody said really good feedback and told us how cool the idea is, and we had really cool mentors. And I surrounded myself with the people from the startup scene, and everybody wanted to build unicorns. And everybody told us, you have to make it this way, and you have to be really fast, and you have to scale the startup, and you have to build da-da-da. And now I know that was the totally wrong approach. We should have approached it as a zebra. It's never supposed to be a unicorn, never supposed to be a big scalable startup. It was just a really nice small business.
Wow, interesting. I like the mindset because it reminds me, unfortunately, to my own failure, my own fuck up with my startup. And we also had the mindset of, you know what, in our case, I think it was a little bit of, we've been afraid of failing, and ironically, we failed because of that. Because if you're afraid of failing, then you're afraid of losing the trust. You want to be the one who knows everything, who can do it. We made a mistake because we launched the product that we had back then. I might share this fuck up soon also with the audience, but we've built a huge platform before even speaking and working with early adopters or first customers. So when we launched this huge thing, it was a ship. I don't have this analogy with zebra and unicorn. I have it like with a huge ship with a lot of containers. And then there is this little boat that you put into the water, and then it just goes with the flow and with the customers, and slowly it grows to a big platform, too big. It's all about mindset. Yeah, I agree to that. So in the end, you fail. How and why did you fail, actually?
How did we fail? I think there was not this one occasion that happened and that like made us or forced us to stop and said, now we failed. Maybe we would have failed if we went like further and went like on market and really tried to sell the product. But as I said, we didn't come that far. The moment I realized that we have to quit and it's over now was, I think, the lowest point when my co-founder, my best friend, told me that she wants to quit and doesn't want to work with me anymore. She didn't say like it's your fault and you're the one who messed it up and you're the one who is making this big toxic environment, but I knew what she meant because we were like friends for 10 years back then, and we haven't spoken a minute about private stuff in 1 year. And then, so I was so focused, like this was the most important thing. And after she told me that she wanted to quit, it was like a wake up call for me. Like, oh fuck, where did this go wrong? So what happened during this time? And but for me it was sure that I don't wanna. It was very clear that I don't wanna continue without her, and we're doing this together, or no one is doing it, and it was a relief for me actually. Like I was really, really happy. No, it's not fair to say I was happy, but I was relieved that this was over, that the pressure was gone, and I could breathe again.
And you could reset. Oh, that's very interesting, because like, first of all, sometimes I have these discussions with people, what is a failure? And everybody's expecting this Hollywood, Bollywood, huge thing where the whole building collapses. And I would disagree with that strongly, because I think even if it's a small or minor project or a startup or a huge company, whenever it went in a different way than expected, then and you had to stop or to pivot or do something else, that's a failure. So first of all, just your story is amazing actually, and I think a lot of people will see and take a lot of lessons learned out of that. But the second thing is knowing when to stop. I had also some discussions with a lot of people who asked, when do I know? You know, when is the right time to stop? What am I a loser because I do stop or not? And in your case, you said like, I just felt a kind of a relief. I felt even better. I mean, I didn't plan that, but you know, I could either continue with this toxic mindset, or I just say stop here. Didn't go out well, but I hopefully can learn something from it. And
tough question. Yeah, really tough question. When to stop? I think that's why reflection is so important. Like reflecting over and over again. Like, am I still doing what I came for? Is this still my purpose? Am I pursuing my vision? Am I still content? Am I still serving with what I'm doing? Am I doing it for the right reasons? And now I really know the difference between purpose-driven and ego-driven. And I think it's time to stop and reflect when you feel it goes into the ego-driven part and ego-driven direction. So I think that's why connecting with the purpose and with the vision regularly, on a regular basis, with all the team or yourself, with the founder, is so important, because then you might not get to the point where you think, how did I get here? What happened? Yeah. So I think reflection is maybe the key.
I agree to that very much. Not only after failing, but also during the process. Am I on the right path?
And I don't know, sorry to interrupt you, but I don't know how you would see this, but you can either pivot or you can stop. But if you stop, you see it as a failure. If you pivot, you're just continuing and it's not a failure. But in the end, you come to the same point. So it's weird to see it as a failure in general.
I absolutely agree to that. I mean, the difference is that when you stop, you completely stop, but you still have a lot of lessons that you can take out of them, right? And then you do something completely different. While pivoting is maybe this adapting. So we wanted to go that way, but everybody's saying, let's go a little bit to the right, so we go a little bit to the right. There's this minor difference, but still, I completely agree with you. And I also already mentioned the lessons learned. So is there a lesson that you've learned and that you would love to share with the audience so that we don't make the same mistake like you already did?
I hope I'm not doing the same mistake again. But yeah, there were a lot of lessons learned. I think the two biggest learnings was, first, you have to lead yourself before you lead others. So get your purpose straight, get your mindset right, work on your reflections, on your vision, do the inner work, like go to coachings or therapy, or like reconnect with yourself and with your purpose before you have to handle external factors like teams or stakeholders or anything. So get straight with your inner self. And the other one is value your team. Like, the team is so important. And I think this is the problem of ego-driven founders. We want everything for ourselves.
Yeah.
Like, we don't want to give up credits. It's not even about the money. It's about the fame and about the credits. You wanted to be on the Forbes cover alone and not with your team. So this is the mindset of ego-driven founders. And I just learned the hard way that nothing is more important than the team. Like, nothing is a one-man show. Even if it looks like, you can't do it without the team. So value the team, nourish the team. This, if you ask me like this, these are the two biggest learnings I would continue into my other business. Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing these very important learnings. But I said at the beginning, you're a very successful podcast host. It's about the business basics. I think there are more than 30, 36 to be precise.
Yeah.
Successful people in general, inspiring people that you have talked with, right? So why did you start this project in the end? And how did you start it?
How did I start it? It's always a good question. How did you start anything? Why I started. Business Basics is like a learning platform for entrepreneurship. I think it evolved from the pain point I was feeling back then, 2015, where I had no clue where to start or what to do or what's the next steps. And I think that I know that many entrepreneurs feel the same way. And it's really important to be solution oriented and making things up as you go. That's true. So you have to find the answers yourselves. But in the end, there are certain foundations of business, fundamentals of business, that if you have those fundamentals straight, then everything else gets easier and everything else is not that risky anymore and doesn't feel that insecure anymore. So that's what Business Basics about. It's about teaching those fundamentals, and it's actually a guide that I wished for back then in 2015, that I had this, because I was, sorry.
No, I just have to jump in here with one thing. There are a lot of research, and a lot of people ask me also, like, what are the reasons that startups or companies fail in general? And there is oftentimes that people build a solution for a problem that is not existing. The second reason would be that by doing so, you waste your money. And once the money is gone, then what happens? Oftentimes, if there is a team, the team starts fighting. So there are team issues. These are the three. However, I strongly believe that the main reason why companies even fail and startups fail is because there is a lack of fundamental knowledge of what it means starting a project. I'll call it a project, a business, your dreams, pursuing your dreams. Whatever it is, it's the lack of this knowledge first.
I think so too.
Right. So I highly agree with that, what you're saying. Also, I highly recommend it to the audience. It's the Business Basics. You can find the podcast, the Business Basics, on Spotify, right?
Yes, Spotify and iTunes, yeah.
Spotify and iTunes. Let's come back to this. So I was just wondering, I had the pleasure, I have to say that, to work with you on one episode when the topic was failure. What was the best episode, the most valuable, let's put it that way, episode that you had so far? Yeah,
that's really individual to say that, but for me, there are certain interviews, mostly when it's about the mindset, that are solving my inner problems sometimes. And one of my favorite podcast episodes ever is the one with Nina Heidinger. And she was this very successful high performer at business consulting, and had a leading position in business consulting, and then she had a burnout because she was really hard on herself all the time. And now she's a mindful executive coach and keynote speaker, and does like coaching sessions and teaches people to be gentle with herself. And Nina and I have like the same expectations on ourselves, and sometimes being really hard on ourselves. And so this was really, really important for me, this interview. but also like every interview is really special, and every person has like a really unique and special story. But also like an interview I did about the trap of freelancers, for example, with the young creative art director Julia Weithaler. She was challenging the thought about growth and why do you have to grow as a company? I mean, for a startup, it's like this indicator for success, growth. Everything is about growth. But in the end, for a normal business, why do you have to grow anyway when you do what you really love? Why do you need like 100 employees when you only need 2 and pursue the things you love? So there were like, everybody brings something that is really special. And I don't know, I didn't really thought about doing a podcast. It just was on my mind, and then I did it, I developed it, and now I'm so thankful because it opens possibilities I never thought about having, like being here now.
Amazing, thank you. I mean, we feel honored to have you here. So we're here at the Failure Talks, and I personally believe that failure is oftentimes part of the success and not the end, in general, also in life, but especially when it comes also to businesses. And you have this business podcast, the Business Basics. Are there any patterns? Have you seen any or heard any 3 common, maybe mistakes, failures that other speakers share with you, that you also would love to now share with the audience in order to help them starting something in the first place, and also, of course, being hopefully more likely successful than without the knowledge?
Yeah. First, I tended to ask the people I invite to the podcast and interview to the podcast, what would you do differently if you could start again? And everybody would say nothing. Even though they made a lot of mistakes, tons of mistakes, everybody would say, I would do it the same way again because it leads me to this point. And so that's why I highly agree with you that it's not about the successes that makes you or the, what do you say, like the wins that makes you successful. It's about those fuck-ups and those small failures on the way.
And the learning. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn.
Yeah.
But either way, it's a win-win.
Yeah, totally true. But there are certain things that you could eliminate and fuck-ups to prevent that are not necessary, that many people are doing. I think one of the biggest is going too fast, too big. Like thinking about growth before you even started and not developing on the way. And one of the methods I always talk about in the podcast is the Lean Startup method. And the Lean Startup method is a method that every startup knows, and everyone in the startup world knows this, but in this corporate, in this Zebra, in the small business world, you could use it the same way, but nobody really knows it. Nobody knows how to start really small and get out with your product, get feedback, and then like develop your product step by step. And
one of my corporate customers, they call it not the lean. So lean is the right way, eventually, oftentimes, but they call the other one, the opposite, the Big Bang Theory.
Cool.
Yeah, because they also had a project and they started with a big bang. So now we're here, it's perfect, we're good to go, we're good to rock, and we will conquer the world. And this is exactly the wrong also mindset within the companies, because they're also sometimes afraid to start small, to make the lessons, the learnings, the learning curve on the way to the final product.
Yeah, totally. And I think really if you figure that out, like the starting small and developing on the way, everything gets so much easier and so much better. And and you avoid a lot of risks. So I think this is one big thing that a lot of people, a lot of founders do wrong. But also I think it's really important to be aware of the vision, like be vision centered, like why are you doing this and what are you doing this for? So I think this is also something that you should keep in mind.
Just previously you said you are right now having, of course, the podcast, the Business Basics, but you also you're about to finish your master's studies. What are your next steps? Is there anything we should know, and how can we follow you as well?
So actually the podcast was my MVP, like the minimal viable product for business basics. Originally, I wanted to launch an online course about these fundamentals and these foundations of the business. And then I thought this takes like really long. I wanted to start earlier, and I did my master's degree and had like other clients, so I didn't have so much time to put in there. So I said, let's start the podcast. And the next MVP after the podcast, because I now know that there's a market for this, is an online guide. I don't want to call it ebook, but it's a guide and a workbook where young founders can build up those basics for themselves. And I think the next step after this will be the online course. Then it's time for the online course. Yeah, and then it should be just a learning platform for all the basics. And I want to invite other experts and everyone to share their basic knowledge, so people can profit from the knowledge and just the basics, because mostly I think it's just about the basics, and you learn the basics and then you can continue it your way. So yeah,
I like the idea very much that you just started with the podcast, which means you had, what was it, a microphone, right?
Yeah.
And the person on the other side as well, and then you just started recording it.
Yeah.
And that's how you test the market. Is there a market for that? Is there a need for that? I love the idea. And when it comes to the course, is there a time frame? When can we expect your funnel?
I don't know. I really try to not put myself under pressure. That's why I do a lot of different things besides, because I don't want to go back to this like really focused and pressured, this has to work and this has to be the thing and this has to be really fast. But I don't know, it's maybe this year. I don't know.
This year.
But the ebook is very soon.
In the making, right?
In the making.
In the making. I'm just asking because I'm sure there are a lot of people exactly waiting for this guidebook, for this guide. Thank you so much for being here again, Lisa.
Thank you for having me.
It was amazing. It was an amazing interview. It was amazing speaking to you. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Lisa Centeno.
Thank you so much.